Okay, it's harvest day. This is really exciting. In less than 7 days, you were able to make a Biofloc bucket in 30 seconds or less per day. Before we jump in, I want to show you guys something. I dropped in a fluval bug bite cichlid pellet. We know they love them, but the last time we dropped the pellet in, they ignored it. Well, they started attacking it this time. That can only mean one thing. You can see all the worms are moving sideways, and the whole side of the container is filled with worms roaming. That means they depleted the microbial loop and they're looking for more. So, since it's Biofloc Harvest Day, we just happen to have some microbial loop right here. Now, this is some of the Biofloc that I got out of our container. It's very gelatinous. It's like in between a gel and Play-Doh. Now, in less than 5 minutes, this is how the worms looked after putting in that Biofloc. They all settled. They went looking for the Biofloc. They all stopped and just continued eating. So let's see how we got that Biofloc. If you notice, the reactor has thick Biofloc all around the top where the bubbles were hitting the sides. All the Biofloc is also settled to the bottom that's in the culture after turning off the air for about 15 to 20 minutes. And you can see here, this is exactly what we are producing. This fluffy substance is your Biofloc. As it groups together, it forms big chunks or it gets blown onto the side of the container by the air. So if you notice, we can just take it off either with your finger or a Q-tip or any other thing that you can get it off the sides with is perfectly fine. It's really not that messy. It's not going to stick to you, and you can just dump it in worms anyway. The important part is this has that microbial loop that we're looking for, that the blackworms were roaming about. That's exactly what they're looking for. Plus, it is safe, high protein food. You can put as much as this in and it will not crash your culture. Now, at the bottom, we really don't want to harvest too much today. We want to minimize how much we're harvesting. So we're only going to take around the top. I'm going to leave the bottom, and the worms are perfectly fine anyway. So everybody has settled back down. None of the worms are roaming. So that top was enough to settle the entire culture. So we're good to go, and we're good to start producing more Biofloc. I even put one of the Marine Pure Bio Balls in there that was soaking in my Biofloc bucket because they looked pretty desperate and hungry. So we're going to start refilling our Biofloc. I'm going to use the same foods that I used yesterday. I'm also using about 1/8 of a cup of the Estes Jumbo Gym so the Biofloc can stick to it. And the carbon today is going to be tapioca flour. Plus, I'm putting a pinch of clay in there. That's completely optional, but again, it's for the microbes. Now, in here, I have a tablespoon of finished compost, a tablespoon of peat moss, and about a quarter teaspoon of leaves. Next is the important part, 20 milliliters of mold I'm putting into this Biofloc culture this time, and 2 drops of molasses. So here's the important part. Even though we didn't use that much more food than we used yesterday, we should get about double the amount of Biofloc that we just harvested today. This is where the utilizing the waste part comes back in. And now we're ready to fill it back up and start again. If you need more Biofloc, you can increase the ingredients. You can feed a lot of blackworms with this 1 2-liter bottle. Okay, let's get to it. We're going to put in our jumbo gems first. They will keep all the ingredients from going straight down to the bottom, and they're constantly going to get coated with the Biofloc material as the water is moving. Now it's time for the 20 milliliters of that muck. It's helping us recycle our waste already. The next thing we're going to add in is your dry dirt ingredients. That is your peat moss, your compost, and your mixed up leaves. And guys, you don't need special leaves to do this. There's free ones outside, I hear. Now we add in our tapioca flour and a pinch of the clay if you have it. Now to help get this all mixed up and make sure it sinks to the bottom, go ahead and put back in your air stone if you took it out. We need a ton of oxygen for this process, so the more airflow, the better. And if you have a clip or something, I suggest you put it on the side because when it's up this high, it can easily blow off. Plus, it's starting to get really thick, so you're going to need the extra air to even move this culture around. Now it's time to add our food. We're going to go ahead and add that carnivore sinking pellet by Hikari, the flake food, and the semi-wafer food that I added in yesterday as well, about the same amount as each. And that's all we're going to do. Now, that's all we're going to do for 24 hours. We're not going to add in anything else. The only thing we're going to add in tomorrow is a little bit more carbon source, but that's about it. We are now building an incredible substrate packed with microbial loop that the blackworms always look for. And if you already have blackworm culture and you're not needing to make the substrate because you already have a culture going, then you just made harvestable biofloc in less than 7 days at home with things you already have at home. So I made another explainer video and it's going to explain to you exactly what you're going to look for. So you don't have to worry about the complicated
Welcome.
math.
We're diving into something today that is absolutely fundamentally changing how we approach aquaculture. And I mean right down to the home hobbyist level. We're talking about taking what we usually consider to be gross aquarium waste and literally transforming it into a supercharged, high-protein food source. It's called Biofloc technology, or BFT, and it totally flips the script on how we handle tank maintenance and live food cultivation. So if you've ever, struggled to keep blackworms alive or constantly battled those annoying nitrate spikes in your culture tanks, the concepts we're unpacking in this explainer are going to completely change your perspective. Let me ask you something. Are you feeding your worms wrong? Look, as fish keepers, our absolute first instinct is to clean, right? We vacuum the gravel, we aggressively rinse those filters, and we just want to scrub away any organic buildup. We see dirt, and boom, our immediate reaction is to wash it down the drain. But here's the crazy part. When it comes to culturing organisms like aquatic worms, that dark, gunky, living slime you're usually tossing out, it's actually a nutritional gold mine. Seriously, it's this incredibly rich, living matrix of decomposing organic matter and literally millions of microorganisms. And it turns out, that's exactly what your worms prefer to eat. Okay, let's dive into this, because this requires a major mindset shift. The goal is not a spotless tank bottom. Actually, scratch that. The real goal is a bottom that is alive and functioning. Managing Biofloc forces us to totally rethink our game plan. We really have to transition away from this idea of maintaining a sterile, pristine tank, and instead focus on cultivating a living, breathing ecosystem. Now, rich organic material and rotting organic material, they are not the same thing, even though to an untrained eye, they kind of look identical. But once we accept that a truly successful breeder box might look a little, well, dirty to a traditional fish keeper, we open the door to a massive biological advantage. It is so fascinating to trace where this all came from. Biofloc technology isn't some unproven new fad you just saw on the internet. It was actually invented way back in the early 1970s by a French research institute in Tahiti. At first, it was just developed as a sustainable way to scale up giant commercial aquaculture farms for things like shrimp and tilapia. Then, around the late 2000s, it saw massive commercial expansion because it let farmers conserve feed and literally reuse wastewater. But what's truly exciting for us is what's happening today. Applying this sustainable commercial tech to the home aquarium hobby, especially for culturing blackworms, it's a revolutionary new leap. We are taking cutting-edge commercial science and putting it right in your fish room. So what exactly is the whole shebang? At its core, Biofloc technology relies on something called the microbial loop. Essentially, we're putting bacteria to work for us. It's an ultra-environmentally friendly system that recycles nutrients. You see, in a standard setup, we rely on nitrifying bacteria to process ammonia, which eventually leaves us stuck with a steady buildup of nitrates. But with BFT, we're piggybacking off that nitrogen cycle in a totally different way. We stimulate a very specific type of microbe, heterotrophic bacteria, to actively hunt down and consume that nitrogenous waste, clumping together to form these dense microbial aggregates, or flocks. And this brilliantly illustrates how this three-step carbon-driven food web actually plays out. Step 1, the microscopic organisms, your bacteria, your protozoa, your rotifers, they are the ones that actually consume the raw fish food and dissolved waste in the water. Step 2, as these hungry microbes eat, they multiply like crazy, transforming that raw waste into a dense microbial biomass. That's your biofloc. And finally, step 3, your blackworms come in and feast on this microbially processed, highly nutritious slime. The absolute game-changer takeaway here? You aren't actually feeding the worms. Mind-blowing, right? You are feeding the microbes, and the microbes are feeding the worms. So let's talk about how you actually set this up safely at home. To apply this without crashing your system, experts strongly suggest using a compartmentalized design. What that means is we simply separate our food production from our worm production. You create your biofloc in a dedicated, separate reactor. Honestly, a barrel or even just a simple bucket works perfectly. You feed this reactor high-protein fish feed and a carbon source. By doing the messy work in a completely separate container, you allow all those potentially dangerous decomposition processes to happen safely, far away from your delicate little worms. And the result you get from that separate reactor is absolutely staggering. You are left with this thick, fully stabilized microbial slime that packs a massive 60% crude protein content. Just think about the tremendous biological advantage that gives you. Normally, if you drop a standard raw fish pellet into your tank and it goes uneaten, it immediately starts rotting and polluting your water column, right? It's a mess. But this Biofloc slime, it has already been processed by the microbes, it's stabilized. So when you scoop this 60% protein powerhouse into your worm tank, it will not rot and foul up your water the way raw waste does. It is a total lifesaver. Of course, to build this incredible microbial biomass, the system needs the exact right fuel. The real secret formula to Biofloc technology is maintaining a specific carbon to nitrogen ratio, specifically keeping that ratio greater than 10 to 1. Now, in any aquaculture system, you've already got plenty of nitrogen coming from uneaten feeds and fish waste, but to get those heterotrophic bacteria to do their heavy lifting, they need extra carbon. And the type of carbon you use matters for sure. You can use fast-dissolving carbon like sugar or molasses if you want a really quick bacterial response, or you can use slow-dissolving carbon like dried leaves or wood for a much steadier, long-term stability. Let's say we decide to provide that energy using a fast-acting carbon source, like sugarcane molasses. When you add this to the water, it acts as an immediate trigger, prompting these microscopic aquatic compost workers to rapidly reproduce. And as they multiply, they literally pull the toxic nitrogen, the ammonia, right out of the water column to build their own cellular mass. It's amazing. But you have to observe closely. If you look at the reactor water and it is suddenly turned cloudy or milky, well, that is a clear visual cue that you have added way too much carbon and caused a massive bacterial bloom. It's all about finding that visual sweet spot without overdoing it. So the crucial point is, the absolute beauty of this entire setup is that you manage the reactor without getting bogged down in intimidating chemical calculations. Honestly, you just use your nose. A healthy, balanced organic layer is going to smell earthy. Think of wet soil or a damp forest floor after it rains. That tells you the biology is humming along nicely. On the flip side, if you encounter a sharp, sour smell, a sewage-like odor, or anything rotting, that is your immediate warning sign that you have way too much nitrogen and uncontrolled decay is taking over. And if you do hit this imbalance, don't panic. The best fix isn't complicated math. It's usually just waiting it out, heavily reducing your inputs, and letting the system naturally catch up. Now let's take a look at the actual science under the microscope, because the contrast is incredible. On the left side, you're seeing unprocessed, loose, flocculous waste sludge. It's totally disorganized, fluffy, and takes up a massive amount of space. But look over on the right. After the microbes and those aquatic worms have completely digested and processed that material, you are left with these dense, compact, cylindrical worm feces. These tiny little compost workers take that raw, loose sludge and transform it into a highly compact, manageable resource. And researchers actually put this exact process to the test, using the aquatic worm Lumbriculus variegatus, just to see exactly how effectively they reduce that waste sludge. The results? They showed a massive reduction in total suspended solids, or TSS. Depending on the source of the sludge, these worms actively reduce the waste solids by anywhere from 15% all the way up to a staggering 40% in one wastewater treatment plant study. Put simply, this proves that extending the food chain through these worms leads to significantly less waste for you to deal with. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the ultimate payoff for you as an aquarist. The sludge volume index is essentially cut in half. Because your worms are constantly converting that loose, floating sludge into compact feces, your overall waste footprint shrinks dramatically. Plus, remember those heterotrophic bacteria we fed with molasses? They are actively pulling the toxic ammonia and nitrates directly out of the water to build their bodies. So between the bacteria cleaning the dissolved toxins and the worms compacting the physical solids, this ecosystem is literally cleaning itself. And for you, that means drastically reducing your need for those frequent heavy water changes. So let's look at the big picture here. Not only does this offer incredible nutrient recycling with a very low environmental footprint, but you also benefit from those drastically reduced water changes, all because the microbes are actively managing the nitrogen spikes for you. And to top the whole shebang off, you get massive yields of supercharged, highly nutritious blackworms. Now, to be perfectly fair, this isn't a totally passive system. It does require active management, like paying close attention to those visual and smell cues we talked about and making sure you're maintaining that separate food processing reactor. But trust me, If you put in the effort, it pushes your live culture to the absolute limit. You can absolutely keep things simple and just maintain a traditional culture if you want. But knowing that this proven 1970s commercial technology can now be harnessed right in your own fish room to totally supercharge your live food, well, the real question is, are you ready to push the boundaries of aquaculture in your own home? Taking your live food production to the next level might just be the absolute most rewarding project you undertake this entire year. So, what are you waiting for?
Just like everything else, once you understand it and you're used to it, it's not that hard. I hope everyone enjoyed making this biofloc and tapping into the potential of this technology.